Well, we had to watch it, so you might as well hang out with us and talk about it.
That's one way to start a show.
There you go. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers postgame show here on this Saturday night. We thank you for hanging out with us. And a big-time game against the Celtics. No, it wasn't. It was bad, and we'll get to how bad it was. Again, welcome to the postgame show here on the PHLY Sixers Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Rothman Orthopedics and Bet365. And we appreciate everybody for hanging out with us on a Saturday night. Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeck. I'm Devon Gibbons, Brianna with you as well. All of you in the chat, we appreciate you kicking it with us. And fellas, that was something. We knew it was going to be something, and we said we wanted to see certain things, but it was even more difficult than we really anticipated.
Well, it's really something because the game hasn't actually ended yet. So we're just sitting here trying to get through the final couple of minutes with you guys. We can commiserate and maybe talk about some positive stuff for Jared McCain and flashes, but at the end of the day, it was a deck chair on the Titanic sinking into the ocean after hitting an iceberg.
It was definitely a preseason
And then
game.
Luke Cornett hit a 3 over that iceberg. It was ugly. And you were hoping it could stay competitive for at least a little bit, right? Because you can't really learn anything from, this guy did this while they're down 35 because everyone kind of gets into that, I'm just going to try some stuff mode. And as bad as I thought it would be, I think they somehow exceeded my expectations. And not in the good way. That was bad, fellas.
Yeah. Like, it's one thing that they were overmatched from a talent perspective. That's fine. We all expected that. But, like, when you asked the keys of the game, the number one thing that I said was, well, do they communicate well defensively? And within the first, 2 minutes of that game, we got a definitive answer to that. Unfortunately, it was tragic. I thought Ricky was bad. I thought Yabu was bad in terms of rotations and communications. I just thought that whole starting group, which, again, really needed to communicate well so that they could limit the amount of pressure on the rim, had to communicate exceptionally, and they were really, really bad. And there's very few things that you can, like Kyle said, there's very few things you can truly take away from a game when it gets that out of hand. But the communication right from the jump was disappointing.
Yeah, it was really disappointing. And also one of the things, I'll speak for myself, one of the things that I said that I wanted to see was just running through your sets and doing things and not getting away from being who you are, being yourself. And some of that we did see. Now, again, we talked about them going against the Celtics starters, and that was going to be a difficult task. But they hung in there right away where it was, I think Kyle said it was 3-1. Then it was 7-7, Derek talked about during the game. And after that, we saw where the difference of NBA champion starters versus your backups and G League players who were getting some run here tonight of what it really looked like. And it got away from the 76ers very, very quickly. It was 40-19 after the first quarter. They didn't even make a three-pointer for a long time.
They had, 3 minutes left in the quarter. It was 25-9 or something like that without the Celtics shooting well.
Yep.
So,
and then they started hitting a few threes, including the one that really got you on the and one from behind the 3-point line with Jason Tatum. So it was a tough watch. It's a tough watch. And again, it's the preseason, so you try not to overreact to anything. And we're not. We're having some fun. We're talking about it. We have to do our show here with you all talking about the game itself. But we wanted to see some little intangibles and some little things to take away, maybe to carry into Monday's game where they're playing the Atlanta Hawks on the road, where maybe some of your starters are back playing in that one, but some of these players are going to play in that game too, and you want to see some of that carry over.
I want to see at least one of these players play in that game. Well, everyone else, I think, could probably just be have a nice little trip down to Wilmington and hang out at the facility down there for a little bit.
Yeah, so that was the disappointing part. And the best part was we got to sit here and watch it together. That's the best part for me tonight on a Saturday night, hanging with these guys and gal and take it all in. But yeah, it's a tough watch. Game has not gone final just yet. We'll tell you when the final score.
It's still going on?
43 seconds left. The Celtics are at the free throw line because for some reason they're still pretending that these fouls mean anything. And, life is meaningless. Eat Arby's is the...
Eat Arby's. Yeah, so tough one. Yeah, Malcolm is saying ugly rotations, late closeouts, easy Celtics buckets for 3, and that was one thing. Also, Luke Cornett, as Kyle mentioned right from the start, we knew Cornett, of course, height-wise, is taller than Yabusele, but it was so easy for him.
He scored like 15 points in 9 minutes.
Oh man,
we had to watch a Luke Cornett halftime interview.
Yes.
That's despicable. That should never happen in any professional basketball game.
We're a little punchy tonight, you know why.
Oh my God. Spending that whole game listening. And look, I don't have anything against the Celtics guys. They're calling it for their people. And it's not like they were, considering the Celtics are the reigning champs, they could have been a little more, dumping on the Sixers energy. So it wasn't as bad as it probably could have been.
He was pretty good. He said McCain was fast. He likes Justin Edwards' sweet shooting because he saw him pregame, and he likes the smoothness of his game overall. So he said some nice things. The hops about KJ Martin, they said some things, and of course the dancing bear, they loved all over him. And then the game really got out of hand after that. So there it was.
But so I would say the most disappointing thing is sort of where Derek kicked us off with, right? It's that it's one thing to just not have the talent, and I think the offensive process for a lot of the night was pretty good. Like they ran through their sets. We didn't see, other than some Jeff Doughton stuff that maybe we'll get into at some point, there wasn't a lot of hero ball and like, hey, clear out for me, a lot of unselfish play. And then they got to the other end of the floor, and it looked like these guys had no plan. There was no communication. Like Yabusele, for example, there are a lot of plays at the rim where he's looking around and he's like, why didn't you do this? And it's like, bro, that was your guy who was just behind you and you didn't notice it. So it's a lot of finger pointing and head turning and things that could have been solved by pretty simple communication and spatial awareness. So that, I think, was the biggest disappointment for me. A bunch of young guys and third stringers not making a lot of threes against the best team in the league. That's not a big deal. But when you show up and it's just like, you guys ready to play? Or is there any sort of sense of what you were supposed to do when we're told by the coaching staff? That would, I'm sure in the locker room, they're getting an earful on that. Like the scoring 80 points or 80 something points.
139 to 89 is a final.
Scoring 89 points, you can easily chalk up to, well, they don't have the talent out there. And like, that's fine. It's the other number that I would bet you Nick Nurse is not at all pleased with.
Yeah. No, offensively, sure. Would you like if Jared made more than one of his 8 threes? Yes. But that is, of the things I'm evaluating him on, that's pretty low on the list because like I've said time and time again, even during the Summer League, I'm confident in that shot. Offensively, the process, to Kyle's point, was for the most part okay.
There were some bad turnovers, but
for the most part, given the talent discrepancy, it was about as well as you could have expected. Defensively, I agree 100%. That's where the communication, that's where the awareness, that's where the just anticipation was just not there. And again, it's a lot of players playing bigger roles against better players than are used to playing. But if you're going to overcome that in any meaningful way, you have to be on point, and they were nowhere near that. And
everyone was playing out of position, not positionally wise basketball. Is more of course, taking a step up and starting against this team that are starters opposite Boston. So these things will play itself out when they're playing against the rest of the NBA teams that they play with some starters on the floor with them at the same time. So when we're talking about Yabusele missing those defensive assignments, yeah, he's going to be the 5, but he's probably going to be out there with some better players next to him at the 4 and the 3, where we discussed it, especially, Kyle, after that first game against the Breakers, where we were discussing having him at the 5, but having better wing defenders to take away some of the pressure of being not a rim stopper, but just a better overall team defender down there with better personnel. Tonight just wasn't going to be. A lot of that communication and finger pointing and turning and looking at Derek and saying, this is your fault because you didn't pick it up. Well, my man, you got to remember who's out there with you, and also you're not playing the 4, you're playing the 5. So normally that's you on that 4, maybe having to make that adjustment. Instead, you are the 5. You are the one that's supposed to communicate and say, hey, switch, or pick coming in left or right, wherever that pick is coming from. He has to communicate that with his teammates and make sure that those mistakes don't happen. That should be cleaned up when he's out there with the much better teammates, the personnel overall, to make sure that those things are not issues. But since they were out there, though, this is why, as Kyle and Derek are pointing out, when they get into the locker room, Nick Nurse and the coaching staff are going to give them earfuls, because those are the intangibles that I'm sure they've gone over so much during training camp. They knew this day was going to be here. They knew it before the game started as they were putting out the starting lineup on the board. You knew you were going to be out there. These are some of the things that they focus. Hell, if we talked about it during pregame, you know they were hammering it home on the plane, in the locker room, doing shoot around earlier to make sure those things.
Well, you know who also wasn't prepared for that lineup? NBC Sports Boston, because the announcers, as they're announcing the starting lineup, go, "Oh, Yabusele's at center." And they're like surprised by this. And 15 seconds later, like, let's go to tonight's key matchup. And it's Jason Tatum against forward Yabusele is their key matchup of the game. And it's, so a lot of people came into this game unprepared. But I do think, so we brought up on the pregame show, the Yabusele at the 5 thing, and, wanting to see him play that against a real team and some more real teams. And I agree that this was not the best personnel setup for him, right? You don't have the switchable wings. You don't have Kelly and Caleb and PG to, pass assignments off and take pressure off of him. But on top of, not being a center and not being tall, his instincts really were not there. And I think that's the key thing, right? You could probably get away with, because he's so big, he's going to be able to defend a lot of true centers, right? Just because he's so strong and big, and that's not a concern. But the ability to move in space, and more importantly, to read in space, beat guys to spots so that your lack of height is not a disadvantage. That's where I think you can see he has not spent a lot of time as a 5 basically ever. And so when pressure was put on him tonight to be more of that guy as the last line of defense, you could see it came unraveled really quickly. And so all our concerns there came to fruition basically immediately. Now, he's not going to play a lot of minutes with Jeff Doughton, KJ Martin, Ricky Council, and Jared McCain as the 4 guys around him. So presumably you can get away with it a little bit more. But everything I've seen so far is that it's not that I think the height or any of that matters. I think it's just the instinct to be a rim protector. He did have one block later in the game that was like one of the few positive defensive highlights. We're like,
also, I forget who it was. Was it Pritchard? Was it somebody?
It was one of the random white guys. Yeah. So just not a whole lot that I saw from him, and didn't come into this season thinking, the 5 is his true role, right? It's just one of those. We're going to see if he can play that for any extended periods of time, because they don't trust Bona yet. He is exactly as advertised, a furious ball of energy who jumps at everything and fouls everything for the most part. So on the nights that Joel is not available, they are going to have some big tests on the horizon.
Yeah, and this was the kind of game I don't like to read too much into any preseason game, but especially one like this. Mm-hmm. But if there was one takeaway there's 2, and we'll go get to them in a minute, I'm sure. But if there's one major takeaway I had, it's that the Bona the Yabusele at the 5. I'm really, really, I would go beyond uncertain about. I'm really down on right now.
You're bearish on
and you're saying
the dancing bear at the 5.
As Drummond is a starter, so you're saying backup 5?
I'm saying him playing 5. Period.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Except for really select matchups, maybe. But even then, you need to either be able to protect the rim or have just really great defensive instincts. And look, the game might be moving a little fast for him. It might take time to adjust. I'm not writing him off completely, but the instincts to make up for his lack of rim protection just have to be elite, and they have not been up to this point in the preseason. Like I said, give him a month, 2 months, maybe he is able to pick up the speed of the game a little bit better. But he needs to be so good in terms of his recognition to overcome, because he really doesn't alter any shots at the rim, not at all.
No.
And in an instance like this where he has to quarterback the gym, he has to actually do that, and he just hasn't.
Brett Brown's been gone for so long, and we still lean on so many of his funny phrases.
And
that he would use.
On top of that, the shot, he made a couple, and he didn't really hesitate. But Kyle, who you say it about loading up the trebuchet? Yeah. He's one of those guys. So even if the shot's going in, he's not really going to space the floor all that well. I'm not sure about him at the 4 either. He needs to, I think, and look, like I said, early on, The speed of the game is probably a lot for him right now. There's an adjustment for sure. But in terms of early takeaways, that's certainly one of them.
And of course, we don't know as much, but seeing him a little bit playing in the Olympics, playing the 5, where some of those matchups, they did go there to make sure he was at the 5 to have some speed against some of the taller centers, where they would talk about taking Rudy Gobert off the floor because of France and Yabusele running with the rest of those guys. You would think that he did, and it's a different game, the FIBA rules and all of that, but basketball is basketball. The communication is communication. None of that changes. The teammates change, personnel changes, but quarterbacking the gym or just communicating and telling everybody where to be and calling out screens and things of that nature and having your head on the swivel when it needs to be, that's just basketball. And that's what was lost in this one. It looked good against the Breakers. It was the Breakers. We didn't see it last night because it wasn't televised. And tonight, we got a chance to see it, and it wasn't a good showing in this one. Now, he has 3 more games where he'll probably play at that spot because Embiid, it's unknown if he'll play in any of these games. So there's time and there's talent on each one of these rosters going forward, from Atlanta to Brooklyn. And I don't remember who the final game is, but
Orlando.
Definitely some talent there. It is Orlando. Thank you. Definitely. So the 3 teams that they're going to play, they're going to have some decent backup bigs out there on the floor to see if he makes up for this poor showing defensively against the Celtics.
Yeah. And look, I'm a little more positive on the shooting part. Yes, he's loading up the trebuchet. And yes, one of his misses was one of the worst 3-point misses I've seen in any NBA preseason game. But 2 for 4 is 2 for 4. And if he is confident enough to get them up, and I know I complained after the Breakers game that there were some record scratch type moments. I think he increasingly is like, I'll get it up. I'll put the shot up.
And quite frankly, just the fact that he missed so badly, came right back down. I think it was on next possession, launched another one.
He hit 2 in a row. For sure. So, yeah, I think that's the most important part, right? He's going to have some bad misses. There is the adjustment to the longer 3-point line. But if he misses one, you can't compound it. And so that, I thought, showed a nice progression from earlier in his career. Granted, he's in a feature role here tonight, so he was going to have to shoot the ball.
Right.
But he could have, pump faked out of it, stepped in for a long 2, driven into traffic, things we've seen guards do on this team.
And we did see him do that a little bit.
And he did, but to get up 4 threes, I think, is perfectly acceptable from a guy who was playing center tonight. And so I think the shame of Joel sitting out most of, if not the whole preseason, is we're probably going to get very little time with him at the 4 that we can evaluate him there, right? Like, I think that's something that's important to see before you get to the games that matter. You need to figure out exactly what his role is, because as we said when they signed him, he does have a different skill set and like a different, frankly, physical frame than most of the guys on this team. So they need to figure out a way to use him productively. They've only been able to look at him as a 5 as of yet.
I mean, then again, like Nurse could come out here and play, start Drummond and play Bona as the backup, and he could try out Yabu at the 4. It seemed very clear early on that Yabu was ahead of Bona in the center rotation. He still might be, but still, just go out and maybe play that just so you can see Yabu at the 4 and give it a look.
Mr. Sandman in the chat says, playing center overseas, no 3-second violations in the paint. The defensive rotations in the NBA, complicated.
And notably,
they're definitely tougher.
They played zone on a possession tonight, and Yabu just kind of stood there and got caught for a 3-second violation. So that's a fair point that our buddy Mr. Sandman makes. Well, we'll get to some positivity in a few moments,
yes,
right?
We will. We'll talk about Bona a little bit more, too, because you have to after his performance as well. We'll get to it all right here on the PHLY Sixers Podcast, presented by Bet365 and Rothman Orthopedics.
All right, first up, we want to tell you about Ace Hardware. We have been telling you a lot about home improvement, and Ace Hardware is a place that you will want to turn to. If you've got a leaky pipe, at Ace Hardware Home Services, they're around the block with everything you need to fix it, including the person to do the fixing. I always love that bullet point because that is exactly what I need. If you've got an air conditioning issue, they've got a person for that as well. If you've got a faucet you said you would fix last fall, which at this point, that's a year ago, you should really get to that. They've got a person for that too, because now they're not just the helpful hardware folks, they're also the helpful home service and repair folks. From plumbing to heating and cooling, they've got the trusted pros to keep your home humming all year long. At Ace Hardware Home Services, they're bringing helpful home, the helpful you love from the store to your front door. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at www.acehardwarehomeservices.com to get you started on your next project.
And guys, I have to tell you about a new friend of ours. That's Golden Nugget Jewelers. Yes, that's right, where Philly gets engaged. All the Philadelphia sports teams have been on the hunt for a ring for quite a while now, right?
Tell them where to go.
Haven't gotten one yet. I have been through the process of ring shopping, looking for jewelry, all that good stuff. Golden Nugget Jewelers is the place you want to go in Philadelphia. If you're in the market for it, whether it's a ring, wedding band, whatever it might be, it's at Chestnut and 8th Street in downtown Philly. Here's the great part, guys. It's family owned and operated since 1987. This place is an institution here in Philadelphia. And if you're getting engaged, it can be a daunting, overwhelming process. You want people who have been around the business, who can point you in the right direction, who, frankly, gentlemen who are watching the show, can point you in the direction of this is what is in style and this is what will always be in style, so that you and your lizard brain don't pick out the wrong ring for your eventually furious fiance that you're hoping to convince to spend the rest of their life with you. And guess what? It's not just wedding jewelry. You can find watches, diamond necklaces, diamond bracelets, earrings, and more. You deserve an expert and you deserve the best price. Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged. Head over to goldennuggetjewelers.com to learn more.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. We appreciate you hanging out with us on a Saturday night, talking a little preseason hoops. And if we're talking some preseason hoops, we can't ignore one of the positives, the really main positive of this one for this game tonight. Jared McCain, while he had to get up some shots.
I thought you were going to talk about my Papa Shot performance.
Well, your Papa
Dropped
Shot
to
performance
129.
was very, very good.
And I immediately followed it with my own 129 for the record.
Your shine, man. He couldn't let you have it.
Never.
Couldn't let you have it.
It's good to be the king.
Oh, look at that. Well, the king as player of the games, we'll get to that a little bit later. The guy did play well. He had to get a lot of shots off. And Kyle, you talked about it during the game about how some of those shots were not his fault in terms of his three-point percentage, but finishing with a team best, and last time we looked, and I'll double check it, a game best, 20 points. Jared McCain was pretty solid in this one tonight.
Nothing like a 20-point performance and be a minus 40. That's always it. So we brought this up on the first show, post-game show we did, Breakers game, right? Had the good shooting performance. And I said something to the effect of, he can never seem to put together all of it at once, right? It's either we see the good floor game, we see the energy plays and that stuff, and you don't get the shot, or the shot is there and we're kind of waiting for everything else. Well, this was an everything else type of game. I thought, despite the fact that I do not agree with Brian Scalabrine on Jared McCain's speed, I thought this was his best effort yet as a driver. And I thought to see him take it into the chest of a guy like Derek White, go through him to score, he was not beaten up on, weaker defenders in Boston's team. So it was really encouraging to see him leverage the strength that he has. And we keep highlighting, that's his strength is his strength as a driver, his ability to use his body, play through contact. And he loves those kind of like scoop layups with either hand.
I'm familiar as a small guard.
So
get it up.
Tonight was a great showcase for that. He hit a couple of like short mid-range shots as well. And so got to his spot, used hesitation dribbles, leaned into guys with his shoulder, used a lot of the little craft things that honestly a lot of smaller guards don't pick up until later. It's an accumulation. Like when you're younger, you're playing in high school and even at a high-level college program, you're still going to be far ahead physically of most of the guys that you're playing against. And so it can take some time to learn the what I would say are like the old man at the Y type of moves, right? And it's encouraging that McCain already has that. The question for me is just like, so how does he expand on what he can't do? How can he improve on the shiftiness, the ability to play in traffic? Because I think that's where you saw him get bogged down tonight and where you see him get bogged down in general. If he's got space and he's got a guy on an island, I think he's got good enough strength to go through a lot of the guys who are guarding him. The question becomes when teams stunt on him, when he's trying to attack like a zone, for example, or just has to play out of he's not at the top playing from above the break. Is he able to squeeze through these tight areas? And more importantly, and you've pointed this out before, Devon, does he trust his handle enough to keep the dribble rather than picking it up in problematic spots. So that's something I want to see him improve on. But on top of the driving, I just thought overall floor game was pretty good tonight. Couple bad turnovers, but was in the mix on rebounds and had a couple of nice deflections. And he ripped, was it Tatum, I think, in the first half?
In transition,
there was one in transition late in the game that he made a nice play, but there was another one earlier where he came in and just turned Tatum over and they went the other way. So some good defensive stuff from him. Obviously, we've talked about it on the show a lot. Like his fight, like his commitment on that end, it's just been, has he held up one-on-one enough? I thought he was probably better there tonight, but there wasn't really a lot of backline support as we talked about, so it didn't shine through as much.
Yeah, these are the kind of games from him that I think I take more positive from than against the Breakers when he's making 100%. Threes.
Yep.
Because like I've said a bunch of times, I trust that shot. It'll eventually come around. Can he do the little things? Can he create inside the arc? So for him to have a bunch of scoop layups, the one power move through Derek White, the little drive and kick game he had with Yabu, both of those Yabusele threes that we talked about earlier were from dishes from McCain. Him finding ways to contribute like that is a sign that he has a chance of figuring it out, because it's really, if he can figure out a way to score inside the arc, like I said, I really trust that shot. And a lot of people, there's been talk about him and Tyrese Maxey and leveraging that shot for a lot of stuff. I think he needs to really learn from anyone on this roster. I think he's got to talk to Kyle Lowry all the time. Because look, obviously younger Kyle Lowry was a better athlete than McCain is, but old man Kyle Lowry finding a way to leverage his strength and his size to create scoring opportunities inside, that's really the guy that I think he can probably learn the most from. Because if he can do that, there 100%. Is a lot to like. Everything from defensively. And I really like that one turnover late where he hustled back and got the strip.
To be still playing that hard, that deep into a blowout where you're just getting your teeth kicked in, it says a lot about him.
And especially after he made a mistake trying to atone for it.
Yeah.
The fight he had on defensive glass, there were a lot of good signs. He just needs to be able to create off the dribble a little bit, attack closeouts enough, and do enough inside of the arc that people can't completely sell out on him on the perimeter. And I think tonight he showed flashes of doing that.
So through 3 games, just looking at the box score from Friday night's game where he had 9 points in 15 minutes against the Timberwolves, he had the game against the Breakers where he was good. He had the game on Friday night, and tonight coming back, as the guy said, this was the better barometer of what he really looks like, what he could look like in the NBA, because he was playing against real NBA guys, and he logged the game-best 31 minutes of play against this Boston Celtics team, starters and reserves. And again, let's not forget, he was out there against Peyton Pritchard a lot too, and that's a real guy in the NBA that's going to play real minutes on a real team, and he handled himself pretty well. So some of the things offensively that I did like, Kyle talked about the three-point shooting, how quickly he got those off. But it was really in the second half where he had that finish over Derek White that Derek pointed out. And I love the fact that he was so engaged in the game, logging 20-plus minutes already. And you heard that yell from him. It's nothing, but it's something, because he was fighting tonight. He knew they were undermanned. The guys that he was playing with all due respect, he's better than them on his team, right? So he's like, look, I'm busting my tail here, and we're getting crushed. And I'm still out here competing and trying to do everything, a complete game, and make a difference and put a dent somehow in here in this particular ball game. So that was one. Then it was the probing of that middle of the floor where he got around the screen, probed it a little bit, hit that pull-up jumper at the elbow, because that's something he's going to need. The lack of athleticism of a young Kyle Lowry, he does not possess that right now. So with that, he has to take that mid-range jump shot and knock down that 15-footer for them to respect that. And when he does that, they're going to close out harder the next time. And then he can keep his dribble alive and get to the basket and still try to get that underhand scoop, maybe a floater, a little runner off the glass, maybe get fouled a few times and get to the free throw line to continue to get into a rhythm. And then the third one, it was a miss. But he tried to punch one on their defense after he got by their defense.
I wish for him that he was able to punch that one.
It was a Ricky one from last season, right? Yeah. He tried to punch one, not an athlete like Ricky, and that was a real thing right there of, I'm frustrated. We're getting our teeth kicked in again, And I got through all of this defense, and you know what? I'm not going up here and lay it up. They're going to pin it against the glass. They're going to send it into the seats or keep it in play and go the other way. I'm trying to hammer this on somebody because I'm ticked off of what he did. So I like that. So those two things of the yelling and then that trying to hammer it on them and try to dunk that one as hard as he could on that defense, those are some things that I think can translate. So 3 games, 3 good games, one that really stands out here tonight, but just some small things with the game within the game when you're getting rocked the way that they were tonight. And he came out there and kept competing is what we talked about in the pregame. Keep competing and keep going out there. He knew that he was the best player on his team. He was trying to do the right thing and run his team the way he needed to with Jeff Doughton. We'll get to him a little bit later. But after a while, it was just so far gone. He was still out there. I'm like, wait a minute, why is he still out there on the floor? I understand you want to give him minutes, but he played 15 last night. You want to see him out here tonight. He's probably going to play against Atlanta on Monday. Take this kid off the floor and get one of these other dudes in here. And he kept playing, played 31 minutes. And even after that one where he got knocked to the floor off after a miss, and we thought it was a good drive, he got back up, ran the other end of the floor, and got back on the defensive side and competed on that end too. So I liked a lot of what we saw from him tonight, and we'll see if that translates. Does it answer the question of can he play regular season minutes right now? No, it does not, but it makes me feel so much better of what we had coming into this particular preseason.
And look, I think it would be entirely justified if Nick Nurse basically stapled him to the bench for a couple of months here until he learned what was going on, sent him down to the G League when that season starts. I'm not going to completely kill him if that happens, but I do sort of hope that he is able to get a couple of games here and there to play alongside of Joel Embiid, because his world as a mostly shooter, whether that's off the catch, whether it's off movement, completely changes when Joel is there. We obviously haven't seen that yet here in the preseason, but I hope we get a chance to see that, if not the last preseason game, sprinkled in here and there throughout the regular season, because I would like to see it.
The thing that's so bizarre to me about the people who get on McCain's case for, the TikTok and paints his nails and all that, it's like, try to act like he's like not locked in and he's not, this is not what an athlete looks like. Meanwhile, you look at the guy's profile everywhere he's played, was a high-level player and winner in California, where that's a huge for any sport, but especially football, basketball, huge population and huge competitive level there for high school level. He was great there. He goes to Duke, and you go watch his college tape. Not only was he very good after a slow start there, he's a big trash talker. He's a guy who mixes it up with people. He's someone who wants to get in there and do the dirty work. So it's been such a misnomer to focus on like, this is what this guy does in his spare time, right? Because everything you see and that you hear is this guy is a competitor. This guy wants to be great. And that play where he's running down a mistake in transition when you're down like 50 points in the fourth quarter says so much to me about somebody's basketball character that you're like, it doesn't matter how many points we're down by. It doesn't matter who else is out there with me. It doesn't matter who's on the floor for the other team for that matter. I made a mistake. I'm in this game. I need to make up for it. And everything I see and hear from him is he doesn't try to take shortcuts, right? Like the work is being put in, and that's all that really matters, right? I think that they got a guy who is going to maximize his ability, whatever the ceiling on that is. And, I wish he would have shot 3 of 8 or 4 of 8 from 3. But even on that front, 2 or 3 of those, we were talking during the game, were late clock, hot potato, like somebody just get it up on a rotation. So pleasantly surprised by how he's played in the preseason so far after kind of a tough summer league for him. And he was, I think, pretty clearly the best player out there for them tonight.
Doug Craig says, who cares about the off the court stuff? Can he play is all I care about.
And that's
some ignorant people do.
Yeah. But just putting it out there that he wants it to be, what does Jalen Hurts say? Let the main thing be what the main thing is. The guy's here to play basketball. He's going to do that other stuff in his free time. And that's okay. It's part of it. Guess what? All social accounts are out there. The teams have them too. He just happens to be one that star at that too. My 17-year-old is like, Oh, Dad, you're around Jared McCain?
Oh, we were sitting there in the Bahamas, and there were people
the kid.
freaking out.
And I don't think they knew any of the other Sixers, but they knew who he was.
They did not know him as a basketball player. I'm sure of it.
So do your thing, man.
And by the way, we hear all this same stuff about him in the practices and stuff, right? Like, not only was Joel saying during training camp, like, oh, he was the best player or whatever, we're hearing things like he was talking a lot of trash in those practice sessions and is jawing with Maxey, jawing with Lowry, just like he's not backing down from people. And that's a great thing to see for a rookie who is going to have to fight and fight hard just to get into the rotation during his first year.
And Martian says Devon really brought up Jalen Hurts. My bad, man. They're back from the bye week. They can fix things tomorrow against Cleveland.
He's the quarterback of the local football team. You kind of have to talk about him every now and then.
I mean, I would prefer not to talk about the Eagles until proven otherwise right now. But
hopefully they get the win tomorrow. How about that? All right, when we come back, we got to talk about some things that need some improvement too, some players that need some improvement. We talked about a positive with Jared McCain. There's some things that we did not like. One of them, we always praise him on this show. We got to talk about his performance tonight as well. We'll do that when we get back here on the PHLY Sixers Podcast.
Look, there are real games coming up. Not what we watched tonight, but real games. You don't want to miss a game because you're sick. Get a flu shot at Rite Aid. While at the pharmacy, also get the latest COVID-19 vaccine and stay up to date on others. You can even ask your pharmacist for a vaccine review or for recommendations. The CDC recommends getting a flu shot every year. A person's immune protection from vaccinations declines over time. Help protect yourself against the flu by getting your annual flu shot at Rite Aid today. According to the CDC, flu vaccinations may reduce a child's risk of severe, life-threatening influenza by 75%. So help protect your family by getting flu shots at Rite Aid. Flu viruses are constantly changing. According to the CDC, get your annual flu shot formulated to help protect you against this year's expected flu strains. And again, flu vaccines do not protect against COVID-19, and COVID-19 vaccines do not prevent the flu. So getting vaccinated for both helps provide the best protection according to the CDC. While at the pharmacy, stock up on cough, cold, and flu and allergy essentials. Rite Aid has what you need to get you through the season. Just walk into your local Rite Aid today or schedule at riteaid.com. State, age, and health restrictions apply. Ask your Rite Aid pharmacist for details.
And our presenting sponsor for the show tonight is our good friends from Rothman Orthopedics. And everyone has a specialty that they love. For some, it's running or gardening. For others, it's shooting hoops, crossing up their defender. And that's us here, including Bree. We all like to get those shots off. And at Rothman Orthopedics, their physicians are not only specialized in orthopedics and clinical research, but they are fellowship trained to treat specific areas of the body. And since 1970, their physicians have remained committed to research, innovation, minimally invasive procedures to get you back to what you specialize in, like me trying to get back on the floor. They're Rothman Orthopedics, and they specialize in you. And with that, Rothman proudly serves dozens of communities across Pennsylvania and New Jersey with 30-plus convenient offices, urgent cares, and walk-in centers. If you need those, you need that quick, fast, and a hurry treatment, and you want to get it done fast, you don't want to wait too long for your answer. These are perfect for you. And for more than 50 years, Rothman has participated in thousands of groundbreaking research and clinical trials with the goal of advancing knowledge, developing treatments, and improving outcomes for the benefit of our patients. Rothman Orthopedics specializes in orthopedics and you. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and make an appointment today. All right, let's get to our guy, Ricky Council. Right away here in the chat, we get one from Doug Craig again, disappointed with Ricky Council too. Not physical enough tonight. Derek, he was one of our guys that we talked about as we looked at the keys to the games. A good opportunity for him. And tonight was one that we weren't yelling, go get him, Rick, as much as we would like to.
It's not the physicality that gets me. And this is something that Kyle throughout all offseason was hammering home. It's not just a three-point shot you have to focus on. It's his decision-making. And I thought his decision-making was really, really bad early on. Defensively, he is still lost off ball way too often. And then offensively, I don't know what's got into his head, but like he spots up from 30 feet out when he doesn't need to. Like, there's nobody guarding him, and he'll be 4 feet behind the three-point line. It's like, what are you doing, Rick? Like, get up close to the line. No, his decision-making has not been good here so far in the preseason. He is, again, I don't like reading too much into preseason play. especially when you're going against an overmatched opponent. But decision making is the one thing that I think you can really point to, and it's just defensively he is not where. And Nick Nurse, every time he talks about him, he'll say something positive, and he's like, "But we have to trust that he knows what he's doing defensively."
Yep.
He almost literally said that once while we were in the Bahamas. This was not a good indication of that.
That it's always a big giveaway when a coach has to offer up some, hey, this is a nice thing he does, but also we don't really trust him.
Yeah.
And like doesn't say that and that's in so many words, but says a variation of that. That's always their way of letting you know he's probably not going to play unless we get to a point where we can trust him on that end of the floor. And that's been my big concern for Ricky the whole offseason. I thought you saw it really in Summer League, right? Where he's supposed to be one of the main guys. And I think offensively, he was above the level of most of the competition there. But on the other end of the floor, it's a little too much headless chicken. Like there's a lot of the off-ball awareness stuff is not great. When he closes out, a lot of times it's out of control, flying by people. And look, that's going to happen from time to time. With him, it happens too often right now. And so that is a hard thing for coaches to look past. Like if you were creating a generic young player, right, the things that they will live with are like, well, if you miss some shots and we have to work around that, work on your shot, that's okay, right? If that's your main problem, that's something they feel like they can fix. When you're not paying attention as much as you need to, when they don't have an inherent trust that you're going to stick to the scheme, when they think you're going to play undisciplined, as Derek said, most coaches are not going to give you the time of day, and that's at any level, let alone in the NBA level.
Well,
so I just think Ricky is currently, from what we can see, I think he's fighting an uphill battle for a rotation spot. And not that like KJ has been anything special, but I think he looks more like a normal NBA rotation wing right now in terms of positioning and instincts and things like that. And that's not good for him because Nurse was already inclined to play KJ over him last year.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that there's been any real progress made on that front.
Yeah, and it's not like this isn't Charlotte. Like Charlotte, he might get his 20 minutes just because he has some talent and some potential. Nick needs to be able to trust him, and I don't think today was a good indication of that.
He's playing against Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and he's getting shook. Okay, we understand that. We're talking two All-NBA guys that just won a championship, won a Finals MVP. And we can understand that, where he may be a little bit off balance with some of those. But it's the ones that the guys are talking about where you're help defense or you're playing off ball there, and you got to make sure that you're watching your man just a little bit and don't get lost for a backdoor cut by one of them for an easy bucket in the paint or along the baseline. You cannot have that. And then on the offensive end, he's 3 for 12, and you watch it and it's 3 for 12. Sometimes you're like, okay, that's a good shot. That's a good decision there. Tonight was just not it. And we go get him, Rick, quite often on this show. And tonight he went and got those shots, and some of those were really bad. And leaving his feet for a few of those passes, while they did not result in a turnover, in the moment, it was and you could see it as it was happening. Stop leaving your feet and throwing the ball the way that you're doing it. And he's had some really good moments in the NBA in his young career. And in order for him to get on the floor, for the things that the guys are talking about of what Nick Nurse is looking for, again, we highlighted it pregame because that's what's going to keep him on the floor. Offensive rebounding, defensive rebounding, playing smart on the defensive end, making the proper pass on the offensive end. He made one really good pass early on where he swung it, bounce pass, which was the right pass instead of a chest pass to Jared McCain. Missed three-pointer, but it was the right play to the wide open man in the left corner. Good play. That's what you have to continue to do and not play outside of yourself, which is what we talked about, having that syndrome of, I'm the best player out here now because everybody else is sitting down in street clothes. No, that was Jared McCain. You had to do your part of what is going to get you on the floor. And guess what? That 3 of 12 might have turned into 6 for 12 maybe, taking those three-pointers. We saw it in the Summer League, Derek, where he did the ball fake, have the flyby, sidestep, and then take a better three. Seemed like he was rushing those instead of doing what we have seen him do over the summer going into the preseason.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, it is very early on. I hope he figures it out. I do worry a little bit. I made this comparison a little bit. I'm not going to make it directly, but like, Paul Reed went down to the G League, became the featured guy, and some of those habits were tough to break. at times I watch Ricky and I worry that he's going to get himself into bad habits and stray a little farther away from the ideal role player that he has to be on his team. And again, I think probably this year, if he doesn't improve early, you could see someone like KJ being ahead of him in a rotation. If he does spend some time with the Bluecoats, I hope he plays more role player-y type and doesn't get too far away, like I said, from that role player ideal that he hasn't been playing like all that
And he
often.
can get lost quickly because it's not just KJ. It's having the 3 wings that you already have, but then you also bring in Kyle Lowry's going to get on the floor.
Yabu could be at the 4
He
more.
could be there, and then you also have Eric Gordon, who they're going to have out there with wings because even though he's a smaller guy, is shooting, and he's in the 14-year
Well, with Eric
vet.
Gordon, we've talked about him potentially starting. Like we don't know if that'll happen ever, let alone early in the season. But let's say that happens. Well, then you have one of your bench wings is a guy like Kelly Oubre, right?
Yes.
Like one of those type, or Caleb Martin, a guy who is going to play a lot of minutes.
That's an
and now
easy
they're coming
20
off
minutes.
the bench.
Right.
So yeah, I mean it's an uphill battle for him right now. And I thought he had some great moments in the first game against the Breakers, but that was a game that they won by 1 billion points and nobody was challenged at basically any point during that game. So need to see some more from him.
And he hit 2 threes tonight. He made
2 of 8,
and he had a dunk down the lane where it looked like Boston was just like, okay,
One of the
go
worst
ahead.
transition defense
Yeah,
possessions.
just go
He had a
ahead.
nice lob to KJ in transition
did.
too when
He
they
did.
were able to get out on the break. But
Yeah, and his
when you don't
5
stop
boards.
anybody,
Right.
it's a little hard to succeed in transition.
Folks, make sure you sign up for our Die Hard program and read the stories of everybody with Flyers going on right now. They had their
could even read about Jalen Hurts.
season open. You can read about him too.
How dare you?
As another game tomorrow. You got to get back on it. Washington is pretty good. Dallas won a close game, and New York maybe a little bit better than people anticipated. You can go read about the Birds, of course, at allphly.com. The Flyers season opener yesterday, another one tonight. So you can read Charlie's work there, and certainly just being upset about the Phillies. You can check out all the writing there, Jim Salisbury, and see what's going on with the Phils. And when the season gets started for the Sixers, got these guys writing some things. Even in the preseason, they're going to write some things, just not tonight. Don't worry about it.
This was not
No,
one
not
that
tonight.
I thought was
No,
worth writing
not
about.
necessary. Not tonight. So allphly.com, sign up for the Die Hard.
To move into more semi-bummer territory or like speculation territory, Bree, can we pull up the so Gina Mizell, who's with the Philadelphia Inquirer, is in Boston tonight, says she asked Dick Nurse if there's any chance Joel Embiid joins the Sixers in Atlanta. Quote, "I don't know yet. I'll let you know." And that's all that is being reported from up there. And as much as
Spoiler, he's not going to let anyone know until game
he's
time.
playing.
Yeah.
Right.
And as much as I am sympathetic with the Sixers and like Joel is going to be able to control a lot of the messaging about what's out there on his knee, his general health, all that, like this type of answer is not helping.
What is the
anything.
vagueness getting? Like, what
you
is
gain
it buying?
nothing from it. All you're inviting is more scrutiny from people like us, more nerves being frayed for people at home who are seeing this and are like, well, why don't they tell us anything? And like, to some degree, that's a fair way to feel that the guy who is the team's best player, the franchise center, just got a $193 million extension. They can't give clear answers on him, right? Like, if there is a plan, and presumably there is, you could just say, look, we're more than likely not going to play him for the whole preseason or the first 5 games of the preseason,
Maybe see
these
him next
road
week.
games in
Just
the
say, hey,
preseason.
see him next week. Yeah.
The plan would be, at most, he plays the end of, like, just to have some clear messaging on this, right? And because with his history and everything that's happened, whenever there's a little bit of doubt, everyone goes into full-blown sky is falling, conspiracy mode, and sometimes that's been justified. So you can't even push back and be like, well, this is just, people being crazy. This is your responsibility to figure this out.
If you just come out and say, look, he's probably not going to play until the final preseason game, but we'd like for him to play in the final one. People can get frustrated with the plan, but nobody panics when something goes according to plan. When you're vague, when there's uncertainty, that's when panic and the worst instincts kick in. I agree. It would be great if they could be just a little more upfront, a little more honest, set expectations, and not treat us all like we're idiots, but this is how they've done it with Joel Embiid for years and years and years. It's very frustrating.
So we'll answer for Gina. No, he's not going to be in Atlanta on Monday. No, he's not.
Yeah, no,
I would
he's
be
not.
stunned if he's in Atlanta
So just
on
say
Monday.
he's not going to be in Atlanta on Monday.
Didn't expect him to be on this trip at
No.
all, period. It's either going to be Brooklyn or it's going to be Orlando. Orlando is on the road where Brooklyn is in Philadelphia on Wednesday night. And, of course, we'll have pre- and post game for you on Monday and Wednesday. Not a televised game on Friday against Orlando. So that's exactly when he's going to play because we won't get a chance to see him to critique anything.
Yeah, we'll get the in-arena feed from. Well, no, actually, maybe Orlando will broadcast that game and we'll get like a NBA TV type of deal. We'll see.
But either way, no pre and post. It's a 3:00 show on Friday, just to give everybody a heads up. So we're Monday through Friday next week. Monday pre and post before the Atlanta game. And after the Atlanta game, and on Wednesday, the same thing for the Brooklyn Nets at home. Colin Derrick will be at the arena. Myself and Roy Burton will have the pre and post for you on Wednesday. Bree will be here for all of those, our 3:00 shows, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And we hope everybody hangs out with us as we get ready for the start
the arena one day.
of the regular. I would love
sit
for her
back
to
here.
go.
We'll try
I'm
to
sure
produce.
as hell not producing the
No,
show,
that's
so
not a
you
good
better
idea
learn
at
how
all.
to work the boards back
Tyler,
there,
you
buddy.
ready, man? Tyler, get in here. Bree is going to be on the press row. She got, at the arena. All right, let's get to a couple of super chats that we do have in here, and we start off with our friend Ernest Peterson with the very first one. Give me some Justin Edwards, more Justin Edwards, some good offensive stuff. All on McCain, of course, and fighting for the boards, tough finishes, and a poster attempt that we just talked about.
We probably honestly should have spoken about Justin Edwards more.
I think this is the closing segment is now on Justin Edwards.
In part because he was maybe their second best player tonight, which is wow. I never thought I
damning
would
with
say
faint
that.
praise, but
but also like you just don't know how many opportunities you're going to get to talk about Justin Edwards.
Yeah.
He was good today, better than I expected. He was better defensively than I expected. He got to his spots off the dribble, which doesn't always happen. If he can find a way to get that shot to the point where he can leverage that to create driving lanes, he has a chance because clearly he has the size. I'm still a little unconvinced if he can do what he did tonight off the dribble regularly, but he was very good tonight for sure.
Yeah, aside from the insanely dumb foul that he took at the end
right
of
at the end of the half.
first quarter, or is it the first quarter? Or?
One of the quarters.
Yeah, I think it was first quarter, but I'd have to go back through my notes on a Tatum 4-point play that not only got a 4-point play out of, we had to go to another commercial break because of. So that was the real crime of the foul. Aside from that, I thought the offensive stuff looked really good. There was one play where, so he's not super explosive athlete, right? He's not a bad athlete, but he's also he's certainly not at the high end. He's more in the smooth category.
Yes.
And I really I think it was in the first quarter, he had a really quick blow by, first step was great, got to where he needed to, hit his spot, hit a short jumper. And that's stuff that not a lot of guys at his size, at his age can do. Just that quick acceleration, decel before you get too close to the guy at the rim and just hit that short jumper, short runner, floater, whatever it might be. And that's the sort of thing that's that guy can do that at 19. What else can he do long term? If he's a competent shooter, and certainly if he's as good as he was for stretches of the game defensively tonight, he's one of the only guys who looked like he had any prayer against some of these guys on the defensive end. And he had some good possessions against Jaylen Brown, who has some holes in his game, but he has become a really, really good offensive player. So to be able to stand him up, force him into some tough jumpers tonight, that I thought was really, really encouraging. And in the midst of a lot of botched communications and other defensive issues, that was a real breath of fresh air to see Edwards stepping up in that way.
Played the second most minutes tonight behind McCain, 30 minutes and 3 seconds. He was 4 for 11, and as Kyle pointed out, doesn't tell the story of just how well he did play. 3 rebounds as well. The one thing that I would point out as far as the negative goes for Justin Edwards tonight, 0 for 5 from 3. Now, Derek talked about that. It wasn't that he was 0 for 5 from 3. It was how close they just did not look to go, even leaving his hand. You're like, all right, that one's not going in.
Yeah.
That one's not going in. And even against the Breakers, I believe it was his very first one from the right corner in front of Derek and Kyle on press row in the first half when he got those minutes. It was long right away. And I'm like, oh, he's a little nervous out there. So I don't know if it's the nerves or a combination of the nerves and still having to work on that outside shot that will help balance out his offensive game. We always talk about this when you have these high-level prospects. They're so good. The one thing that's often late is that three-point shot or the outside shot because they're so good at driving to the basket and finishing when no one can stop them, especially as someone like him at his height. When we got some of the pre-draft conversation and when he did sign on as a two-way guy with the Sixers undrafted after he went undrafted, one of the guys I talked to in the area and just simply pointed out he's a hard worker, he's self-made, he knows how to play. He will do those things. So that might translate. It might happen. It might come for him. It's going to take the Delaware Blue Coats probably to get that three-point shot going. But it was encouraging the other offensive things to see, especially the one that Kyle's pointed out, left side of the floor. It was one of those centers. It was either Tillman or Cornette that was there because he really had to take that step back, square himself up, and get that shot over the long arms of those two veterans. I mean, listen, they're veterans who have played good minutes in the NBA.
I mean, they kicked the crap out of everybody else on the Sixers tonight.
They did.
So.
Yes, they did. So the resistance was there, but not for Justin Edwards. So he's young. He's 19. That stuff will work itself out if he continues to work and get there. We're not saying he's going to be a lefty shooter that's going to shoot 38 to 40% from three, but just so that he's respectable.
Well, you did just say it, though. So.
Oh, okay. Well, then 38 to 40%, Justin, get there. And just a respectable number where people have to close out on you and feel like you're a real threat behind the three-point line. But other than that, some good stuff from him, especially when we've talked so much about, I don't know if he really has a chance. He's gonna spend time in the G League with the Blue Coats, but I don't know if he's going to have a chance. He's going to spend all of his time down there. This was a good one tonight. And he looked after that first one or two possessions, I think the nerves were gone. He looked like, okay, I'm okay.
Well, I think in contrast to Ricky, for example, there weren't a lot of like, oh, he's completely out of control moments, right?
Yes.
It was a lot of either he's getting the shot up or it's like a 1-2 dribble move, getting into his pull-up, getting to the rim, playing through contact. And as a young guy, that's the sort of stuff you have to do. But more importantly, the defensive stuff, because if you can put some more of that on tape and you gain the coach's trust, that will go a long way. So like the defense, like the flashes on offense, despite the fact that he ended up shooting poorly. And it says a lot about the game that we just watched that a guy who was 4 for 11 was probably the guy who was like, oh, that he had some stuff tonight. Yeah.
Yep. Real time with Prince Blue with our second super chat of the night. The Sixers needed Coach Bell tonight.
Where were you, Derek?
If I block him, will I still see his super chats?
Well, we'll see them regardless. You can
block
whatever you want.
They're going to pop up on the screen anyway, so you're going to see it.
Yeah. Derek in 48 Hours Part 2 will be
I'm telling you, I'm going to break
the Christmas hit of the year.
I'm going to break into these studio computers and I'm going to block him on the main account.
By the way, I'm glad that Gavini brought up that Sam Hauser is a dead-eye sniper. I said I don't think I've ever seen him miss. And tonight it showed he was 5 of 6 from 3. And I sat there thinking, what 3 did he miss? Did I black out in the middle of the game? That guy's, if you leave him in any way, you need to be benched. You just can't leave the guy open.
Well, I think the whole team needs to be benched then because everyone left him open.
They did, so.
Time for our world famous end of the week roll call here tonight.
Yeah, baby.
Preseason edition.
Thank you to all our lovely people who showed up for post-game despite the fact that it was one of the worst games you could possibly imagine. They lost by 50. So thank you to Jay the Jungle, Martian Lynch 33, my girl Winona,
hey, Nona.
Terrion, or Tehran.
Tehran.
You're going to have to tell me.
There you go.
Probably Tehran, right?
See it. Yep.
You saw me. Gavini in the building. Ernest Peterson, Citizen X, Lee Nguyen. I almost said Ernest Peterson a second time, and now I did it.
With the super chat. Thank you, Citizen
X. Yes, Mr. Sandman.
Bring me
There's a
dream.
Benjamin without an N, so he's just Benjamin. So that's...
What's up, Benny?
Let's just call you Ben. Thank you, buddy. Thank you to Hinky in the building. Thank you to Real Time for the super chat. Thank you to who had the other super chat, Bree?
Citizen X.
Oh,
and
Citizen X with a late one.
Yeah.
To keep hope alive. And
thanks, Aaron.
thanking Ern a third time. So I'm really giving him all the love tonight. Non-NBA channel, Doug, Craig.
Non-NBA channel.
Jess.
Hey, Jess.
Al, the 2-minute warning was
What
here.
up,
We had
Al?
lots of friends tonight. Guys, thanks for being with us. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell icon to get notifications when we go
Ding.
live. Hit the thumbs up to say thank you to Bree. Goodbye.
We'll be
Good
back
night.
Monday. See you at 3.
We all silly like the mayor.